Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron. And I'm still Aaron. It's just me tonight. Boat is out on assignment with his middle school band. I believe they're playing a football game or a series of concerts or some such thing. So I'll be flying solo tonight. We have a lot to talk about. Big news, I think. It's pretty big on the Amiga front. And we're going to talk about Lotus 3. We mentioned Lotus 2 and to a certain degree 1, and we touched on 3. Gosh, it's been many episodes ago. But we're going to give Lotus 3 a run here. I've played this game quite a bit this week and got a lot to say. I've changed my mind on some stuff, and other stuff not so much. But before we get into that, let's talk about what's been going on this week. Let me grab my trusty notepad here. It's been an interesting week in the Amiga world. A lot of small news, and then a couple of what I would consider major items. Let's go with the big one first. A couple of days ago, I guess it would have been probably 4 days. 3 or 4 days ago. The fellow who is, in essence, in charge of the Vampire project. For those that are new to the show, it's a FPGA. It's a programmable chip and PCB that hooks into a classic Amiga to make it faster and give it limited abilities to do stuff like HDMI outs and adds. I believe it added compact flash or SD support or some such thing, or IDE. These cards have been all the craze, and boy, I've pitched them as much as anyone, frankly. I've been very intrigued by them. Anyway, the fellow that is, if not in charge of it, then one of the higher-ups with the project, I think it's the main guy. He goes by Kipper2K. He announced that the board, the Vampire 2 board, was going to be increasing. Excuse me, from 150 euros to 250 or 289 for the fastest model. He mentioned that the orders were greater than production rate and they couldn't cope with demand. And the only option is to have the boards assembled by a board house, which is going to raise the cost of production. And then they were going to pass that savings on to you. As you can imagine, someone's got to pay when the costs go up. And so there you go. That's a pretty large increase. 100 euros. You're talking, was it around 40% increase in the product? I mean, don't get me wrong. Everything I've heard is an excellent product with good support, but it was a big increase. And I remember at the time I posted it on Google Plus, and I put my little opinion in there. I was like, this is a really big price increase, and it's a lot to take in. I think that Kipper 2K was in a bind, frankly. In fact, he pretty much says he was. They'd never in their wildest dreams understood or realized that the demand for this product would be so high. From what I've heard, these were being assembled by hand at his home, and so when you get 1,000 orders, he was in a bad spot, and the only way out he saw was to have these boards, manufactured. Excuse me. the the reaction to this post was, I mean, it was both sides. You know how these things go. Some people were very, very furious, and then some people were like, "Well, it's okay. It's a good product." You know, I wasn't surprised when the animosity and the brushback started on it, because again, you're talking about a 30 to 40% increase in price. I believe he said he was going to honor the people that had currently paid, that were in line, and he said it would be at a loss to him, and then anyone else that was coming up. And I was a little vague on how it was going to work, but from what I was able to ascertain, if you had put your name in the pool and you were in line but you hadn't paid, you'd be getting the new price. Could be wrong. That's the best I could come up with. I haven't looked at it. A lot of people canceled orders, and I've got no numbers. This is just what I've been able to pick up through forums. I talked to several of our listeners about it, and saw opinions both ways on the subject. And again, I can 100 euro upkick is it's not pocket change. Now, after the blowback from this, Kipper 2K posted on the English Amiga board, effectively saying he was surprised that the reaction was so nasty, and it did get nasty on occasion, and he had told himself that if the project ever stopped being fun, he would just walk away. And in essence, in no uncertain terms, that's what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to fulfill the orders that they had promised to ship, and then he was going to sell his fabrication stuff, sell his boards, sell the parts, sell everything, and be done with it. Now, this came in a couple days ago, so it was a day or two after he made the first announcement. I've heard rumors that maybe he's been talked off the ledge. I've not read any formally saying that he was going to keep making them. So I'm going to go on the assumption that these boards are done. I know part of the problem also was the fact that apparently the team had sold some Amiga 500 boards, or maybe a board on eBay. I'm assuming it was like a fundraiser, for them. Apparently it sold quite a bit. And apparently these boards were selling for quite a bit on eBay, which you can imagine since they're in such high demand. And there are so few of them out there that, people want them, and some people have a lot of money. So we'll keep the story going and see what I've been a part of a lot of little communities since I was in computers and whatnot. The emulation community in the early days was very they would go after each other quite a bit. There was a lot of animosity, and it was sad. And some emulators left because of it, and some things changed. There was a lot of infighting. When I was a member of the, I was into a bit of software that was used for pinball. It's still around, virtual pinball and future pinball, and the people would fight over, table, who's doing what table. They would fight over who's stealing someone else's graphics. They would fight over all sorts of things. They would fight with the people that made the program. Future Pinball, I recall, the fellow that made it could be difficult to get along with, and so there was problems there. If you are in the original Xbox community, and you've ever filled with Coin Ops, which is an excellent program that I really like, but the community around that is always under scrutiny. The fellow that makes it is a real genius guy, but he's a real divisive kind of odd guy, and his people, his followers, are don't question him. It's a very strange community, but often they are on the verge of a civil war over these sorts of things. So, and Mugen, another community I was involved in, which was they basically people took an old fighting game that had been made, and they were able to use this to make their own fighting game. With they would have Mortal Kombat guys and Street Fighter guys and cartoon characters, all sorts of stuff, and you could fight each other. It's actually quite neat. But people all the time fought over whose graphics got used, by who ripped off this, who ripped off. It's tons and tons of infighting. So this issue with the Amiga scene and the people picking sides on this is not unusual. I'm disappointed. Generally, I consider the Amiga people, we're all sort of in this together, right? And if Kipper 2K has to do this, really, and it was disappointing to me too. Like I said, it priced me out of it. But if he has to do it, it has to be done, and no amount of anger or name calling is going to make it, any better. It just, if he has to have them produced, that's just the way it is. And we can't forget the fact that this fellow brought something very miraculous to the system, and sometimes the benefit of the doubt needs to be given. I'm not going to take a side on it. I can see everybody, but I mean, it would be nice if everyone chilled out and calmed down and remembered that we're just people messing with an old computer. We're to have fun. No, when money gets involved, I know people get uppity, but we need to just chill out and relax on it. Moving on to other news, I saw that Dreamcatcher, as usual, has the scoop on the upcoming Oliver Twins book. I read his review, and it sounds great. Those guys are real interesting. Again, they'll be on the show. I'm trying to think when Boat's got the interview. I mean, the interview is scheduled for the next couple of weeks, and we're really looking forward to it. And I'm sure they'll promote their book on here. But everything Dreamcatcher said, he said it was awesome. And I saw that our buddy Chris Folds has already pre-ordered it, so I'm sure he'll chime in with his thoughts on it as well. We've got, of course, Dreamcatcher always writes crazy articles, and he's got a couple other ones up, including a very interesting thing on a sort of an exclusive, I guess. It's a Microprose game that never got released. It was multi-platform. He's got video footage of it up. We've linked it on our Google+. I had a look at this game. It's kind of neat, Who knows what it would have been, when they got around to getting everything put together, but it looks kind of interesting. So you can check that out. I haven't actually get to play it yet. I don't know if you can actually get the demo or anything, but if you can, I'm going to have a look at it. The next bit of news we've got is the formation of a new users group, or a new group, Amiga group in North America. Anytime I see this, I'm always excited. A gang is forming a group in Northeastern America, which I think he's looking for people in Maine, New York, Canada, Vermont, that area. I think he even spells it out. And that's always good. We need all the groups we can get in the States because we don't have that much going on. The link is on the Google Plus page, and if you want to check it out, and if anyone over there who is actually a member of this wants to, give me some more information on what they're going to be up to, feel free to shoot it over. I noticed computing. If you're in the UK, it's computing.co.uk. They have gotten nutty and have put up the top 30 Amiga games of all time. Now, they've only put up the first 10. Looking over them, Of course, this is one of those gimmicks where they show you one and you go to the next one. You show you the next one and blah, blah, blah. So it's just basically click stuff. Anyway, they've got Batman, the movie, at 30. They've got, let's see what we've got here. We're not going to go through all these. They got Bubble Bobble at 29. It seems kind of low. I know they had TV Sports Football in here, which surprised me as one of the all-time great Amiga games. Because I mean, I like that game, okay, but I don't even think it's the best football game on the Amiga. So I'm not sure I would put it in the list. They've got like another one I think is really low, Swiv at 28. So as usual with these lists, your mileage may vary, but you might want to check it out. Update on my Amiga, which you can see running here in the background if you're watching the video. It looks like my right mouse button has bought the farm. It's not working anymore, unfortunately. And I, thanks to a very, very fine fellow who has scoured schematics and whatnot to try to give me a leg up on this thing. We're going to give it a shot. Try to go in there and see if I can fix it. The fellow who is helping me out, his name is Jason Warrens, and we appreciate it. I'm probably going to do surgery this week, and we'll see how it goes. I still am managed. It's funny. Once I load up a game, it works fine. I haven't, unless it's a mouse game. And I put a lot of Lotus on it this week without any trouble once you get it to load. But not having the right mouse button is weird, and sometimes it just acts really strange too, and so that can be a problem. For those who are interested, I posted a video on I think it's on Facebook, and I know it's on Google Plus, of our trip to Mothman last week. That wacky, nutty festival dedicated to the Mothman of West Virginia. It was an interesting time. Me and Teresa were there for 2 days, working at our table. We did great. Crowds there were huge, estimated at over 10,000, which is miraculous, frankly. I couldn't believe how many people showed up to this thing, and we sold everything we had pretty much, and Teresa had a lot of awesome stuff that she made that sold, and we had a good time, made a lot of contacts, gave out a lot of business cards, and met some nice people, and I think a good time was had by all. So if you're interested in just wondering what it's like, I did a walkthrough of it, just wandering through the what they had to offer and looking at some of the vendors and stuff. So if that's your bag, feel free to check that out on the Google Plus or Facebook page. As I said, Boat is off this week, and but he did chime in. I believe he recorded a himself doing an Amigos play on Lotus 3, and I'm going to towards the end of the review, I'm going to splice in his comments on the game. I honestly have not heard him, so I'll be interested to see if he liked it or not. We had a look at the original, or really the second one, but we kind of touched on the first one and third one many episodes ago. I was a big fan of 2. I just loved it. 1 was okay, but 2 took it and ran. I mean, really a huge upgrade. So I guess without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right in. I got a lot to say about this one. I played this quite a bit this week. Lotus 3, The Ultimate Challenge. It got released in '92, 2 discs. Again, this is going to be sort of old ground. If you listen to that first episode of Lotus 2, pretty much the same batch of guys. Published by Gremlin. Gremlin did tons of games. The notable titles that I picked out were Disposable Hero, the Hero Quest games. Actually, I I played the board game of that, and they did a good job on the conversion. Of course, the Lotus series, Mickey Mouse, Nigel Mansell, Supercar series, Techno Cop, which is a guilty pleasure of mine, Switchblade, and the Zool series, which we covered. You can have 2 players simultaneous. It was developed by Magnetic Fields. They've done a lot of stuff, of course. Their notable titles are the Crystal Dragon, Kid Chaos. Of course, they did the Lotus series, Supercars series, Super Scramble, and Wrangler. Which I've not played a couple of those. You've got a lot of the same names from the original series. The designer was Peter Liggett. He did this Super Scramble Simulator Wrangler. The music was done by Patrick Phelan. He's done some interesting stuff. Little Devil, which is a game I'm going to have a look at sometime in the near future. Nigel Mansell, the Zool series. Premier Manager, he did those. The coder was Sean Southern. Again, a veteran of this series, did the Lotus series, Supercars series, Super Scramble Sim. So you've got a lot of the same guys that are back to perform their magic once again. Again, this one runs on the ECS OCS, and this got converted to a few systems, notably the Atari ST, the PC, which I have to say I've not played or seen that one, so I'd be interested to see it. And they released it on the Mega Drive, but it was released on the Mega Drive as the Lotus 2, as Lotus 2 on the Mega Drive was known as Lotus Turbo Challenge. So, it's kind of weird. This thing was on a couple compilations, the Lotus Trilogy, I believe, which had a CD32 release, and it was also on the Super Sports Pack. So it had a few different releases. Of course, the compilation disc, which we never got any of those here at all. But they're always a good idea to grab or to do. And it's an easy sell too, especially the Lotus series. One thing you can say about them is they're all different. I mean, to a certain degree, and they you can see having all 3 around. It's funny, to get some scope for reviewing the third game, I really had to go back and have a play and a look at the first 2, because Lotus 3 is sort of an amalgamation of the 2. In fact, it's more. I would say it's more that than it is a game on its own right. They just sort of borrowed or used parts of the other games to add options to this one. So, what is Lotus? Well, of course, it's a arcade racer. It has 2 player ability. This time they've added a third car, which is a concept car called the Lotus M200. It's without a doubt my least favorite of the cars. I just don't like the way it handles. I can't explain it. I don't like it. Some of the things that are different in Lotus 3 over Lotus, say, 2, they brought back refueling, which was absent in the second game. There's an arcade mode in this one that you can also partake in, but which I personally, I'm not a big fan of the refueling. It sort of slows the game down for me, but there is some strategy involved in doing that, and so it's kind of fun. I will say this: it's nice to have the option to do either one, because why not? There's no reason not to have both. It has lots of good options for controls. It's got you can accelerate with the button or the stick. It's got of course you put your name in, you put your buddy's name in. This one doesn't have any linking ability, so it's limited to just 2 players on the same screen, which I believe that was in the second one. It has refueling, but it doesn't have a pit. I believe that was the first one that had the pit and had the refueling. So they've just in this one you basically, when you see the little fuel sign, you just basically pull over. This one has more track types. This one borrows a lot of graphics, tracks, and whatnot from the first game, sound effects, or from the second game. A lot of that stuff they just basically ported right over. So in this one, the types of tracks you've got, it's a marsh track. You've got a future track, those are wacky. The night track, lakes, mountains. Mountains are they're very tricky. That's a very difficult, wacky sort of thing. Snow I think is really neat. Road work. I don't like road work, but it's interesting. You have to avoid road work signs, little piles of stuff everywhere. Storm, desert, fog, the city, of course. A windy course, which is it blows you off to one side and has tumbleweeds going across it, so it's kind of interesting. And then sort of a country road course. So you've got plenty of different courses, which is nice. They give you lots of options. There are many more graphics. There is everything runs a little slower. I'm wondering if it's because of all the new stuff that's in there. Who knows? It's funny when we were going to review this, I never liked this game. I just thought I remember playing this the first time, booting it up, and thinking that I'd screwed up. I was like, wait a minute, this is Lotus 3? It looks crummier than Lotus 2. I mean, I thought there was a major difference. And so when I loaded up and played it this time, I still felt that way. So I had to go back and play Lotus 2. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what the problem was. Because really, graphically, it's similar to a fault. I mean, effectively, it's the same in a lot of ways. But I think it comes down to the frame rate. Lotus 2 runs a lot faster. Not a lot, but enough. And maybe it's subtle, but I mean, it does make a difference. To me, it's a big difference in the way the game runs. That's the Achilles heel of this version. Is that frame rate or the sense of speed? Now, don't get me wrong. This is a fine game, and compared with almost any other racer, it would crush it. It just so happens that it happens to be the sequel to arguably the best racer that was ever released on the Amiga, and so that's a lot of shoes to fill. A lot of people can get past that, and I think I did eventually, because the game's got a lot of other stuff to offer. We'll look at some of the other things it has to offer. Aside from all these different tracks, of course, you've also got your choice of music. Of course, you've got your choice of 3 cars, which are neat. And, I mean, they do handle differently. It's not like you can't tell the difference. You absolutely can. And, of course, they look different as well. There's a lot more happening on the screen at once. A lot more cars, a lot more rubble, a lot more obstacles to cope with. There are there's just a lot to look at. And sometimes the screen's got so much stuff going on, you're like, holy smokes. But you can see a stutter now and again, too. Like I said, there's just a lot of stuff. And I'm also guessing that to put that much on the screen at once, there probably was a real draw on the system, and thusly the frame rate suffers. One of the big calling cards of this particular game is the REC system, or Road Environment Construction System. Now, I never fooled with this back in the day, but this time for the review, I was like, let me give this thing a shot. And I went in and tinkered with it, and it's interesting. It's not. I always mistakenly thought it was a track editor, and it is, but it's not. Can you go and make your own track? No, you absolutely can't. Can you go and manipulate a track? Yes. And what I mean by that is you can change the curvature of the track. You can change how intense the track curves are. You can change how frequent and the steepness of the hills. You can change the surroundings, and what I mean by that is you could pick like the theme of the level. Is it the desert? Is it fog? Is it night? You can change the frequency of how much scenery shows up. One of the options you've got is to define the amount of obstacles that are in the way. It gives you the ability to do a lot of stuff that manipulates the environment. I mean, it truly is a road environment construction set. You can literally sit there and tinker with this and come up with tracks that feel different. Is this a track editor that you're going to be making tracks and sending over to your buddy? Absolutely not. But it's fun. It's fun to play with for yourself. The save system's surprisingly smooth, to be completely honest with you. It was so smooth I couldn't believe I was done. You can go in there and work yourself up a track in about a minute, and it generates a code for you, and then it saves X amount of tracks. I think it'll save like 5 or 10 tracks, or maybe a few more, and then you can come back and play those. You can even set up a circuit with homemade tracks. Something else that I thought was interesting is you can actually, instead of making the track, you can just go to the window that has the codes, just type in something, and it'll take the variables that you type into the blanks, and it will make you a track. So if you want to try, I made one, and I can't remember the word I typed in, but I just typed one in, and it generated me a track, and off I went. So which was neat. I like that. So Rex is a mixed bag. What it is simple, quick, and fun. That's what it is. Is this detailed? No. Is this something you're going to spend hours tweaking to a perfect track that you can send to your buddy? No, probably not. But it's still fun. It's quick. Now, that said, if this is one of the reasons that the game, it runs a little slower, was it worth it? Probably not, honestly. I would rather have that speed. But who knows? I never quite. I looked around to see if I could find on anyone talking about the frame rate and whatnot. And I never saw it come up. So they seem to be pretty satisfied with it. So I guess they thought this was the superior game when they released it. I mean, it really, in a lot of ways, it's superior in almost every way. But it's not really that new. That's the other problem with this. I'd say if you're going to pick the two biggest failings of Lotus 3, one, the overall frame rate and the speed sensation. Two, it's not all that new. A lot of recycled graphics, a lot of recycled sound, a lot of recycled tracks, a lot of recycled everything. And so while things have been added, it's not the quantum leap that Lotus 2 was from Lotus 1. If you'll recall Lotus 1, you were running on a half screen, even in one player. It wasn't as smooth as the second one. It had less obstacles. It had less everything. 2 was a major overhaul. Major. Added a lot of awesome stuff. 3, it adds some stuff. It's not enough really to crow about, in my opinion. Now, again, it's a fine game, but it's not the quantum leap that the second one was. This game has a special wacky thing that you can access, where it's got its own separate like mini game hidden in it. I believe the game's called Pod. I remember playing it a long time ago. It's not like you're going to run out and buy this game, but it's cute, Excuse me. I noticed that when you make a top 10 list or whatever, the wacky names are back. Those are always amusing. So I kind of like that. These games have they do have an attention to detail that I like. Something I wanted to also touch on was the music. You can have music or sound effects. I usually go with sound effects. I do like the option of picking the song on the CD player. It's cool. I remember back in the day, I thought that was just awesome. It really blew me away. But I honestly, there's only one song that I really like out of the bunch. which was track 2. I can't tell you why I like it, why that's my favorite. I guess just because it's really upbeat. But that's the one I like. But generally, I liked having the special effects. The special effects, there's nothing to write home about. They're pretty good. Again, it's everything you've heard before. So nothing's gonna surprise you. A lot of this game, really, when it comes to reviews, it was sort of all over the spectrum. Looking at what a cross section of what it got, I usually go with Amiga format to get a good idea of what I think the game actually scored. Now, not being from the UK, you guys may know a little bit better than me about which magazines were the more reputable. But for me, I remember I used to get Amiga format. I always thought it was a really good book, and I think it was one of the bigger books over there. So that's usually the one I go with. And they gave this particular game a 76. That's a little harsh. I mean, you're still looking at like a C, but the most of the reviews here are between. I think the high score I saw was 94, and the low score I think was 70. So I think 70's that's a little low. I'm assuming that people were just underwhelmed by the lack of new stuff. I know I read the Amiga format article, and that's pretty much what they touched on. I think maybe people were being a little bit picky. I've turned the corner on this game a little bit. Having played it so much this week and having played the other ones, I swear to you, I running these games. I loaded up the Amiga, and I loaded up Lotus 2 on TV here, and watched them side by side, and they're eerily similar. I mean, I don't. In my mind, there was this huge gap between the two, and it's really, like I said, it all falls back to that frame rate. That's that's where the final shot. If I had the druthers, I would like the options from 3 and the smoothness of 2, and I would even forego anything that was slowing down the third one again. And as much as I like the Rex, the editor, it's a cute toy. It's fun to fiddle with. It's not new tracks. It's just not. It's you can do wacky stuff. You can make the tracks different, but they're not new tracks. So that was sort of a letdown. But overall, I enjoyed the game. I would probably play the second one first, but I thought the third one was better. And it was better than I thought. So, I mean, I'll admit I was a little off because I've given this game a hard time over the years, and it was actually a lot better than I thought. Let's hear what Boat has to say. I'm going to let him chime in here with his 2 cents, and then we'll get back and put this thing to bed.
Lotus 3. I was surprised at how disappointed I was with this title. Lotus 2 is hands down my favorite racing game on the Amiga, and is probably in my top 5 racing games of all time. There's something about the tight controls, the just magnificent scaling of the graphics, the varied environments, the gymnastics that your car can perform as you jump a log and jump over a body of water, the AI, which is tough but not too tough. I like all that stuff. Lotus 3 I thought was going to be a home run. When I started playing, I realized that it was more of the same but worse somehow. They brought back the fueling system from part 1 that you didn't have to do in part 2. I guess they were trying to make it more sim-like. But gone were any of the more arcadey things that I really enjoyed from the second game. Like there's no more jumping over things, hitting the logs. The tracks were hilly, but they weren't. You didn't get the sense of speed. It was not the same. The controls didn't feel the same. Now that's not to say that there weren't some things that they improved in the third game. You can listen to your own music. while you play, you get sort of an Outrun like CD player that you can choose a tune from. There's 6 tunes to choose from, and you have the option to listen to one of those or listen to the sound of the engines. So that's an improvement. They also added a very robust course editing system where you can control a lot of the variables that go on within the courses. You can control the setting, the hilliness of the course, the difficulty of the AI. Another thing that they added in this game is the ability to choose your car. In previous Lotus games, you were bound to whatever car was on the front of the box. Now they brought back some of the cars from earlier games, plus a brand new green car that looks pretty neat. And in the car selection screen, they actually show you a bunch of different angles of the car, including the interior. So that's kind of cool. But it all falls apart when you start playing it. It's strange for me to think about, and if I hadn't just played Lotus 2 fairly recently, I would think it was just in my mind, but it really just doesn't control as well. The cornering isn't as tight. The graphics look the same or worse. There is a new future environment that I don't remember from Lotus 2, but I just didn't have a good time with this one. And that saddens me because I love Lotus 2 so much. But it is what it is, and you live and learn, and now you know. So that's my thoughts on Lotus 3.
Okay. So I had a look at this on eBay. This game obviously did not sell like its predecessors. I found no listings for any of these in the U.S. I know this had a U.S. release, so that's odd. The only copies that I could find currently were in Italy and Germany. They were going around $70 U.S. shipped in the box. And looking at the history of this, they have sold for around 50 or more. That seems to be the going rate. So pretty pricey for this game if you're interested in picking it up. The compilations are probably a little easier to come by. And I saw a few, not a ton, but I saw a couple of them. If you want Lotus 2, boy, those things are out there left and right. You can find them anywhere. But Lotus 3, not so much. Again, probably indicative of how well it sold. The sad truth is the ship, I think, sailed. And, in fact, one of the things I read in several of the reviews were just the fact that people just thought, hey, this is a rehash. And some people we would accuse it of being a triple rehash, saying that the second was close enough to the first one to not be a big deal, and this was close enough to the second one to not be a big deal. So overall, it's a double rehash. I think that's a little harsh. I think it stands up on its own. But that was something that was held against it in a lot of the reviews I read. Next week, I don't know what we're doing. We haven't decided yet. So it'll be a bit of a surprise. We will either announce it on the web page or we won't. I know I've got a few ideas, and I've been pushing for some games. If you listen to the show very often, you'll probably know the ones I've been pushing for. That Boat seems to shrink away from, and I'm gonna give it another shot. But we'll be back next week with in the usual dungeon with all Boat's fancy schmancy stuff, and we'll give this thing a whirl again. So I appreciate you putting up with me and for putting up with my wacky rig, and we will be back in full force next week. So everyone, relax. Pick up your Wicco, load up some Lotus Esprit, the version of your choice. Don't worry about money or anger. Just enjoy the games and remember why you're in this hobby in the first place. And it's to have a little bit of fun, have a little good times, and remember what it was like back in the day. And until next week, adios.